All right, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's Super here, and welcome to another video. So, for pretty much the last few months, we have come to determine that the most likely NetherRealm Studios project that we will get next is Injustice 3 because it makes the most sense out of anything, right? Try to close out the Injustice series. It was left with a dual ending. They could go either way with the actual canon ending that they decide to tackle, or they could go with the multiverse thing and, tackle both of them. But pretty much we haven't had an Injustice game since 2017. It's been almost 10 years, right? Ed Boon has said in the past he would be surprised if they never go back to Injustice. MK1 looked like an Injustice game before like it got turned into MK1. Not saying that's what happened, but it just looks and kind of feels like an Injustice type of game, right? So that's the conclusion we all have come to as the most likely scenario. But there's this new event, new comic book series that DC is launching, or I guess they launched at this point, and it's going to have a Mortal Kombat character. And it made me really think, what if we don't get Injustice 3 and we actually get this comic book event as the next NetherRealm game? Because it makes complete sense. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, it's a new DC event, new DC comic book called DC K.O, where characters from the DC universe compete in a tournament, and in that tournament they go up against different characters, and not only characters from the DC universe, they're actually including like quote unquote guest characters, for example Sub-Zero, for example Homelander. And the whole point is to finish or be first place, and it like helps you take on Darkseid, because Darkseid is like coming back to Apocalypse. This whole event is taking place in Apocalypse, and based on the description, the more like the deeper you go into the comic book, the more you're like faced with different type of struggles that aren't only fighting versus your opponent. It's sort of like corrupting you the further along you go into Apocalypse, which sounds like a crazy ass concept that would be crazy enough for NetherRealm Studios to tackle on as their next fighting game. Let's read a little bit of this Sub-Zero inclusion here. All right. So this is from App Trigger. I don't know. They were just the first like article that popped up when I Googled it. The series DC K.O features 32 heroes and villains fighting to gain, and by the way, 32 character roster seems like a pretty good base roster to me, right? 35, I think, was MK1's base roster. Sounds pretty good to me. 32 heroes and villains fighting to gain enough power to defeat the villain Darkseid. So that's what it is. But from like the actual DC website, it says that the deeper you go into the tournament, you kind of like face your moral compass or something. I could probably like bring that up too. But power to defeat the villain Darkseid. But even more than that, it's giving us answers to some of the best what if they fought questions of all time. You know what, this whole concept as a NetherRealm Studios fighting game seem like a huge, gigantic money-making machine. This seems like a crazy concept that would be very popular and would be a huge money-making machine. But let's read on here. I feel like this would actually sell way more than in Injustice 3 game. Characters from the feature a question. Characters from The Boys, Vampirella, and even the murderous doll Annabelle. That's crazy. Will be on hand. And New York Comic Con, Jim Lee and Friends panel, the DC president and chief creative officer confirmed Sub-Zero will be making an attempt to finish someone. Here's a quote by Jim Lee, I think. We thought it would be really cool to pull in characters from outside the DC multiverse and kind of spice things up, Lee said during his panel. Sub-Zero will appear in the series' February issue, Lee also joked that there will be a Death of Sub-Zero special coming soon. So we're going to be getting Mortal Kombat crossover with DC again. Obviously, the last time that happened, maybe I should have had like actual Sub-Zero gameplay in the background, but I just picked out Swamp Thing because Swamp Thing is awesome. But obviously, the last crossover we had was Sub-Zero joining the Injustice 2 roster. And before that, obviously, Scorpion was in the original Injustice game back in 2013. But just the title alone, DC K.O. seems like a fighting game title. I'm not saying that this is going to be the next game. I just had the idea of like, what if, sort of like, you know, the whole concept of this comic book is like, what if scenarios, right? So what if NetherRealm is actually making this comic book series into a video game the way they did the Injustice series? So we get like a Homelander versus Superman for the first time ever. We get Sub-Zero versus Batman. We already had that, but you know, we get any sort of like crossover that they could think of that they have the license for. You get that. Like Homelander versus Superman is like one of the biggest what ifs. Oh, what would Superman actually win versus Homelander, you know, being like sort of a copy of evil Superman, or just a copy of Superman, just like what happens if this version is an evil version. But we did already have the evil version of Superman, which is the Injustice Superman. But 32 character or 32 character tournament is the original concept. Man, it just sounds like the perfect blend to make a fighting game, right? Like, what is the essence of the start of Mortal Kombat? It's literally a tournament, like the Mortal Kombat tournament. That's the whole concept where Mortal Kombat came from. And having like a tournament for DC characters that also sort of mixed in with characters from other franchises. You know, the Annabelle doll. Imagine seeing that shit on screen. Maybe Chucky could actually come into the picture here, because obviously Annabelle's a horror movie character. I believe most of the Annabelle movies are rated PG-13, though. I don't think they're rated R, are they? Maybe they are. I'm not sure. Obviously, Homelander is not PG, so you could have any sort of character that they have access for licensing purpose thrown into this DC K.O. game. Obviously, I think in the core root, it would probably just be a majority of characters would be DC. But it's a really cool idea for a fighting game. And if they have like maybe 70% DC characters, but then you also throw in these other characters from other franchises on the base roster, and then it opens up the infinite potential for DLC characters. You won't even need to make a Mortal Kombat versus DC 2, because you could have Scorpion, you could have Sub-Zero, you could have Kitana or Sonya or something like that on the base roster representing Mortal Kombat to fight versus a DC roster. I don't know. To me, it just like when I first saw this and I saw an article about it, I'm like, man, that would actually make the perfect fighting game for NetherRealm Studios to tackle, because you know that's literally what sprung forth Mortal Kombat was the Mortal Kombat tournament. This guy just gave up. I'm just throwing logs in his face. That sounds wrong, but I'm throwing them anyway. Do your thing, Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing needs to make it in the next game, no matter if it's in Injustice 3 or if it's this DC K.O. thing. But I heard that, I haven't read it yet. I think there's only one issue. It started in early October, and I heard that there's like crazy things happening in this DC K.O. already. I just haven't read about it. No spoilers. Well, I mean, I don't care about getting spoiled, but people might care about getting spoiled. But I heard some crazy stuff already happened. But I don't know. This was just like one of those like what if scenarios, hypothetical videos that I want to make. Like, what if the next NetherRealm Studios game isn't Injustice 3, but it's this DC KO thing. Like a lot of people were already giving, like putting out the scenario, like what if we actually do get a Mortal Kombat versus DC? And I was already thinking, like, why would they move the Mortal Kombat 2 movie to the summer, or I guess May, if they're not going to have a Mortal Kombat game out? Or maybe not that drastic or that dramatic, but I'm like, man, wouldn't it be perfect for a Mortal Kombat game to come out at the same time or close to the release of the new Mortal Kombat movie? I'm like, what if we don't get Injustice and we do get a Mortal Kombat game to go along with the Mortal Kombat 2 movie? The game would be called Mortal Kombat 2. Sounds like a perfect scenario to me. But I do still think the most likely scenario is we are going to be getting Injustice 3, and we're going to get like a closure to that franchise in that series. There's a lot to pull from. There's still a bunch of issues that the story mode could take from in Injustice 3. There's still a bunch of characters that never made it onto the Injustice roster. So the most likely scenario is going to be like in Injustice 3. But I saw this and I saw that it's a tournament. And I read right now, I didn't even know how many characters, but 32 characters to be in this tournament. It sounds like a fighting game to me. Like I said, I'm not saying that it's going to be NetherRealm's fighting game. I'm just saying that it sounds like it. So this is more like a hypothetical, like what if this was the next NetherRealm game? I will tell you guys right now, I feel like if they actually, by the way, if this is the next NetherRealm game, like let it be known that I'm the first one that brought it up. I want that credit. But if you compare Injustice 3, and then you compare the potential of this game like DC K.O, right? I'm just calling it that because that's what the series is called. I'm telling you right now, the DC K.O potential is far, far, far larger than in Injustice 3. I do think Injustice 3 is going to sell well. It's not even going to come close to a Mortal Kombat game. I think that Injustice 3 would probably sell about 2 million copies. And I know that maybe not 2, maybe like 3, because Injustice 2 sold 3 million copies. Injustice 1 sold like less than 1 million, I think, or maybe like 1 million too, something like that. But the Injustice series has always sold way less than the Mortal Kombat games. That's why it kind of didn't make sense if Warner Brothers needs, the money. To me, it didn't make sense at the beginning to have an Injustice 3, but, maybe people haven't had an Injustice game for so long that they're going to come out and support it. But I think that the best case scenario for an Injustice game would be like 4 million copies sold. But if you're talking about, like a crossover potential game like DC K.O, and you bring in characters from the boys, like Homelander, you bring in characters from Mortal Kombat like Sub-Zero and all these other franchises that they have the license to, man, this game has the potential to be huge sell-wise, especially to a casual audience, which is what, Mortal Kombat caters to the most, right? Like that's why Mortal Kombat's such a juggernaut, because the fatalities, the iconic characters, they cater a lot to the casual fan base who might only play the story mode or might only play, the towers or single player and stuff like that. I think it could sell way more than 4 million copies. I think it has the potential to sell maybe like a Mortal Kombat game, maybe a little bit less, maybe like 25-30% less than a Mortal Kombat game, not including MK1, because MK1 I think barely, well, no, actually it sold like 6 million copies, right? Yeah, I definitely think a DC K.O game could sell like 5 million copies for sure. Just think about how hype people were about multiverses and the potential of that game with different franchises. It could be like that, but a more what do you call it? Like it would just be more popular because it's not going to be a Smash Brothers type of game. It's potentially going to be whatever they want it to be, like 1v1 fighting game, stuff like that, right? So it'll be more mainstream is what I was trying to say. So yeah, I think hypothetical situation, if NetherRealm Studios does end up making this DC K.O game, I think it would be huge. Maybe not so like maybe not right now, but I think in the future, because they could only do so much with Injustice 3, right? Like once, I think they're gonna, if they do Injustice 3, they're gonna close out the series with Injustice 3. And then later in the future, obviously the next game would probably be a Mortal Kombat game. But after that, if they want to take a break from Mortal Kombat, this is like a perfect substitution to, the little break that Injustice gives Mortal Kombat, even though we haven't had that because we had MK11 and MK1 back-to-back games. But yeah, this game seems I'm getting too excited here. This comic book series seems like the perfect fighting game opportunity. Oh man, it would be so sick to actually fight Homelander versus Superman, wouldn't it? We can only dream. But that's gonna be it for today's video, guys. Just a little fun video because I saw this and I'm like, what the hell? I didn't even know this series was happening. But also in the panel that they mentioned Sub-Zero when they introduced him, I think it was actually Ed Boon who came on stage and introduced Sub-Zero as a guest in this comic book series. So I thought that was pretty cool too. This would be a crazy, crazy game if NetherRealm Studios were to make this. But anyway, that's it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.